ask you all to turn your mics off then and to raise your hand if you want to speak, and we'll start the meeting. Liz, are you recording from now?
Yeah.
Lovely. Can I just say welcome to Dave House, and Mark Childs, welcome to this meeting. Item number 1 is apologies for absence. Liz.
We've received apologies from Gloria Tanner, Yvonne Jardine and Tony Beddow.
Okay. No, and Jeff Jones. He rang me. He's not able to be here either.
Okay, thank you.
And Chris is having to leave at about 4:25 as well. So just record that. Can I ask item 2 then, disclosures of interest? Any members of interest to declare? No interest. Great. Prohibition of whip votes.
Yes, my daughter works for the Authority in Social Services.
Okay, doke. Liz will send you a form for that then, Chris. Lovely. Okay, Liz?
Yeah, that's fine.
Whipped votes and declaration of party whips. Have anybody got anything to declare? Take the silence as nobody declaring. Minutes of the previous meeting. We go through page by page. All had a chance to read them. So page 1. Page 2. And page 3. Can I ask if you agree the minutes are accurate? And can I have a proposer for accurate? Paxton, thank you. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Can I have a seconder for that the minutes are accurate?
I'm not sure if I was there, Sue, but if I was, I have read the minutes and I can't remember if I was in that meeting.
Okie doke. Is that okay, Les?
Yes, that's fine.
Lovely. Well, under matters arising, we have a question from Tony Beddows regarding an article that was in the Wales Online on the 20th of November. Have you all had a chance to look at that article? Assume you have. Tony's question is about Mrs. Clare's care, and it was noted in the article that there was no response there from City and County of Swansea. Dave, have you got anything to say on that one?
Yeah, there was a response, Chair, but I struggled to find it as well, looking at the link that Tony had sent us. But there was a response, but it was somehow it got hidden in the online bit for the link that Tony sent. I'll circulate a copy of the response that was sent at the time. But the important thing to say is we had been working with the family prior to that article, appearing in the press. Clearly we are challenged at the moment around capacity, as the committee are well cited on. But I am pleased to report that the intervention that we were, that the family were looking for, has taken place now. So the important thing is, have we managed to get care and support in place? And my understanding is that the individual and the family concerned are happy that support is in place now.
Thank you, Dave. We'll go on to item number 5 then, public question time. Liz, are there any public questions?
No, we haven't received any.
Great, this is going well, isn't it? Item 6, update of the management of COVID-19 pandemic and performance monitoring. Item is verbal. Dave, is this down to you?
Yeah, I'll pick that up, and I'm sure I'm sure Mark will make some comments. But if I start first of all, apologies first of all that you don't have a performance report. In usual times, you'd see the performance report. I think it's either bi-monthly or quarterly, and the way we had timed the report for the sessions that you had fitted with our usual reporting arrangements anyway, so we didn't have a difficulty with that. As we've as the committee have kindly agreed to this emergency focus, it's actually created an unintended consequence in that some of the meeting dates fall outside of when we can actually generate the report. So if I brought a report, you'd have been looking at the same one that you saw last time we spoke. So I think that the regular beat we'll need to get into for the time being is you'll get a report every other meeting in the usual fashion, and then you'll get a verbal update from me in the intervening period, if that's okay. Hopefully, in fairly short order in the new year, we'll be back to your proper programme anyway, but we've got a little bit longer to wait before we can get back to normal time. So apologies for that. First of all, I'll give you a general overview if I can. First of all, in terms of where we're at with COVID across our region. First of all, I'm sure you're aware of this from information that you'll get elsewhere, but I'll kind of formally feedback on that. The third wave that we've been experiencing, I think probably, as I've said before, is a little bit different, and we thought from the modelling it would be a little bit different. In the first and second waves, what we saw were big escalations up to a high peak, and then an equally rapid drop off of community infection rates. What the modelling suggested to us would happen was that on this third wave, we would see more of a gradual increase up to a high level and, a really difficult level to manage, but not the very high peaks that we'd seen, during the first two waves. But then that higher level would be sustained for a long period, and then a gradual dropping off. And that clearly presents, different but equally significant challenges for us, particularly across health and care. And it does appear to have played out like that. We still have very high levels of community transmission. Certainly, the rates per 100,000 are still up over the 300, 350, which is a high level. If anybody can remember back to when we first started talking about this, if you went above 25, you were having difficulties, let alone these hundreds. But then we got used to, sadly, positions where sometimes we had 1,000 plus as a rate of community infection. I've been eagerly waiting and hoping for any signs of a gradual drop off that we were anticipating, and possibly across our region. We're beginning to see it. Our numbers now have dropped well below the Welsh average. Sadly, other areas of Wales are picking up and are going a bit higher again. But our region, right now and this week, is much lower down. So we're well below the Welsh average, but are still in those hundreds. So we're still got really problematic rates of community infection. And of course, the latest news is all this worries about the new variant and how that may play out. And the truth is, we don't know yet. I don't know any more than from from what you've seen on the news, etc. But clearly, the public health message and the UK and Welsh government message is we need to be very cautious about this. This new variant could have an impact, both in terms of increased rates of spread, reinfection rates, but also potentially, the worst case scenario would be, getting round kind of immunity, the vaccination, etc., and people becoming seriously ill as a result. That second absolute worst case scenario, clearly there isn't evidence to support that at the moment. We're just cautious about that's a worst case scenario that we hope doesn't arise, but we need to be prepared for. There does seem to be some indication that the rapid rate of reinfection associated with this, it does look as if that may be a factor for us. So what we might then experience, once this, becomes embedded, if it does become embedded as a new variant, we might see a further uptick then in our rates, which is a very depressing position to be in. But nevertheless, that does seem to be the early indication. I'll be very cautious about this. Even setting aside that, we were worried about the combination at this time of year of other respiratory illnesses becoming a factor, flu and other things. As things stand at the moment, we're not seeing that huge impact, apart from probably in one area, not particularly for this panel, but there is some evidence that certainly in the hospitals, some concern around younger children and the impact for younger children of serious respiratory illnesses. That clearly has a knock-on impact of, well, that's taking up capacity in the hospitals. That will have a knock-on impact for the rest of our already very stretched health and care system. But touch wood, in terms of impact more generally on the well-being of our older population in particular, or those individuals with particular vulnerabilities to respiratory illnesses, additional impact on our workforce, we're not seeing the indications of other respiratory illnesses at the moment, touch wood. So that's good, but it is early days in terms of this winter period, so we're still very cautious about that. Overall, the combination, I suppose, of COVID, both in terms of how it's impacting at the moment with community spread, and then direct impact on our workforce, either through illness or needs to isolate or caring responsibilities, compounded by all of the other usual reasons for absences, compounded additionally by this long period, best part of 2 years now, isn't it, where we've had, intense pressures on our workforce. We are still across the board. This is health and care, often having to operate with 40% of our workforce in particular areas, absent from work on any given day. And the big areas of impact are ones you've heard about before: domiciliary care, some fragility in the residential care market, but a bit more stable in the residential care market, which is good, but definite impact on things like acute clinical teams, which are specialist health teams working in the community, district nursing, therapies, all of those other community services that work together to provide our community health and care offer. All of them, severely impacted by staff absences. Demands for those community services are clearly, really high at the moment, and for all the reasons that we've talked about previously. The fact that individuals for such a long period of time weren't able to access anything like usual health and care services. Well, all of that backlog of need, for want of a better description, that's all flowed back into the system. At the moment, we have very high numbers of individuals requiring end-of-life care in the community. And we're really stretched in terms of our abilities to support those individuals. It's obviously a priority for us to be able to do that for those individuals, so they're not having to be in more institutionalised settings, that they are being supported in the place that they want to receive that palliative care. That's a particular pressure for us. But the overriding pressure across community services remains pressures in domiciliary care. So we are continuing to support more people and with more hours than traditionally we would have been able to. That fits with our remodelling of refocusing services around care at home, but we've not got sufficient capacity in the system, predominantly to meet need, predominantly because of the absence of workforce. For our in-house services, that's generally absences from work that's causing the problem for us. for the reasons I've already described. In the external market, it's a fundamental shortfall in the number of workers that are actually available, plus with sickness absence on top of that. How that plays out in particular is we continue to experience significant numbers of individuals where providers are saying, we just can't fulfil the runs. We haven't got enough staff to fulfil the runs in this particular area. We need the local authority to step back in and provide that care. We had a really difficult period probably 2 months ago now, and then it settled down, and then we've just seen a re-emergence of that in the last couple of weeks. Not to the same extent as 2 months ago, but we're in a more challenged position now, so it's been even more difficult for us to pick up those care packages. We are managing to do it. We are picking up the care packages, but what we're having to do is effectively use our reablement services to provide that maintenance care, which means we then haven't got the reablement services available to either support step-up reablement from the community, or more usually and more problematically for us, able to support that step-down reablement care from as part of hospital discharge arrangements. So that's a real pressure in the system, and it ripples out into everywhere. Another consequence of that is we are having to use far more temporary and bridging residential care placements. We use a lot of our in-house services to provide those care packages, mostly because we feel like we've got more control over our in-house services rather than having to secure alternative commission contracts with external providers. Whilst we've got capacity in-house, we're trying to do that as much as possible. That's really stretched now. So we have moved to, with the health board and on a regional basis, to commissioning a significant number of additional placements from the external markets to effectively bridge the gap for individuals who are stuck in hospital, unable to access dom care, unable to access community reablement. They're going into a short-term residential care placement. There are risks associated with that. Obviously, those providers will provide excellent care, but what we're not able to do is wrap around therapies, to make sure that's a proper reablement offer. So the risk for those individuals and the risk for the system overall is that those individuals end up becoming long-term care placements, which wouldn't be optimal for them, and obviously will create repercussions for us going forward. Bit of a worry at the moment about the only place that we have capacity theoretically in the system at the moment is that residential care capacity, we're rapidly trying to use it up for all things for all people. So we're using it for step up, we're using it for discharges from the hospital, we're needing to use it for obviously for placement, proper placements, for long-term placements for individuals. There are emergency support where carers aren't able to cope, emergency respite and all those sorts of things. So there is a danger for us that we end up saturating the market, meeting all of these demands, and then worst case scenario, I haven't got anything left in the system to actually provide residential care placements for when people would usually need a residential care placement. So we're having to keep a close eye on that. As things stand at the moment, I'm comfortable there is still enough slack in the system, but a meeting with health board colleagues earlier today, we were already starting to get some feedback that we thought we had 50 placements available, and 20 of those placements that the providers have already said, oh, we can't do it after all, which just kind of shows the fluidity and the staffing challenges that everybody's got across the piece. A couple of other things I'll just pick up on. I alerted you previously to, it was always our intention that we would, certainly during those first 2 waves, that in prioritising the most urgent interventions with individuals, safeguarding, risk of breakdown of care at home, all the pressures on the hospitals, all of that kind of stuff, that some of our more routine work, which isn't, it's not, it might be routine, but doesn't mean it's not very important to the individuals who may need care and support and their, carers and families. But some of that lower level, more routine, more proactive work, some of it would go on the back burner. And the intention always was, well, we'll get back to that stuff, this year, earlier this year, I'm talking this calendar year, because we thought we would be over the worst of things once we got into this year. And of course, what's happened is we've just carried on in as difficult a set of circumstances, albeit for slightly different reasons, this year. So we've never had the opportunity to catch up on the backlog, and the backlog has got bigger and bigger, both in terms of assessments and probably even more so in terms of planned reviews. I talked last time about we were going to take the unusual step of commissioning out to an external provider some of the work on those backlogs, so that we didn't leave them any longer and that we caught up with our work, certainly before we get into the new year. I'm not talking calendar year, I'm talking kind of spring, that sort of time. Wanted us to be back up to date by then, and in recognition of the fact that we have left people for a long time without being absolutely sure about the care and support that they might need, despite all of the checking in, despite all of the make sure you contact us if your circumstances deteriorate, etc. We do want to catch up the backlogs. So I'm pleased to say that those complicated contract negotiations have all been finished. We've identified the first tranche of individuals that will receive that assessment or review from elsewhere. And that work is currently being allocated to that external provider. So we're, probably took a little bit longer than I'd hoped, but nevertheless, it's in play now, and we remain confident that we'll get through all of those backlogs by the end of this financial year. At the latest. It will still have repercussions as we work through those assessments and reviews. That'll mean changes to potential care packages, etc. And we're still going to have issues in relation to capacity, etc. But nevertheless, it is part of our attempts to catch up on backlogs. Probably the other area that I'd flag, we're starting to see, probably for the first time, some pressures in our mental health services around capacity, and again it's linked to staff absences, both health and social care. At the moment, we're still able to give assurance around those most urgent interventions, but you'll know it's quite hard to get access into those specialist mental health services at the best of times. So if we're struggling with resources and we've got limited capacity there, that's going to be even more of a challenge. So we're mindful of the impact on individuals and carers. What we're trying to do to mitigate that, again in partnership with the Health Board, is to strengthen that lower level mental health support. So we've invested considerable funds, through various regional, national grant opportunities and money that we could recycle from our core budgets into strengthening third sector offers, etc. But that community bit, that's under considerable pressure as well, as we would have expected, given again what we thought the mental health impacts of COVID and lockdowns and all of those kind of things. That's definitely played through into the community part of the continuum. So that's under pressure as well. But we're doing what we can, but we'll have to keep a close eye on it. I think probably the final point for me would be around carers. Some of you may have seen there was national press around CIW's review of the effectiveness of local authority and health boards support to carers, which presented an honest picture of it's not as good as it needs to be. You're not necessarily able to get a purposeful assessment, consistent with what statutory expectations are. And even if you get that assessment, then the variability in terms of the type of support you may be able to access is again far below the expectations that we should all have. That's not something that I don't think will come as a surprise to you as a scrutiny board. You've rightly had a focus on that and have challenged us in terms of our performance. I suppose what it does expose is that, the picture isn't good enough across Wales, and reinforces the message picture's not good enough for us locally or regionally. I'm not sure in the current climate we're going to be able to necessarily tackle some of those fundamental structural weaknesses, but nevertheless we're working hard with both local and regional carers partnerships to come up with a range of alternative options to support carers where we've not necessarily got the statutory support that that they might ordinarily expect. And again, just today in our in one of our regional transformation boards, we had feedback from the Carers Partnership with something like 7 additional proposals for alternative forms of support that were co-produced with carers groups, all of which were signed off today, all of which we have found a way of funding from within the region. So we'll now be implementing those, but it's still scratching the surface is probably the honest judgment of that. But there's certainly a focus both locally and regionally on that particular area. That's probably it from me, Chair. I may have missed some things, but I'm sure either Mark will pick up on them, or I'm sure the questions from the panel will take me back to where I need to be.
Thank you, Dave. Mark, do you want to say something before I open up the questions?
Well, I thought I might, but I'm not sure what's left to say. That's a very, very full explanation of the situation from David. We have, everywhere you look almost, we have some level of difficulty. We're not operating on a normal basis virtually anywhere, and in some areas we're operating under a great deal of stress and health. I know Welsh Government are aware of the situation and are trying to do what they can do. I know we're having talks about social services budget going forward and how that might be reflective of the general COVID, what we've learned from that, and particularly what we're learning now and the difficulties we're facing now. At the moment, it's simply we don't have enough people. Whether it's social workers, whether it's care workers, whether it's nurses or district nurses or whatever, for several reasons, there simply aren't. There are not enough care for the amount of carers, for the amount of care that's needed, and we are prioritising, we are safeguarding, and we are asking family and others and reducing within limits what we provide to try and get over this. And I think we are looking at this until February is what I'm hearing is about the time. So we've got several more months of this yet. I am hoping and praying that everybody gets their flu jabs and we don't have any serious outbreak of the flu, because if we have that on top of what we've got now, well, I'm sure on some level we will rise to the challenge, but it's going to be an even greater challenge than we've got now. Oh, yeah, I mean, I can only speak with admiration of the way staff are addressing and continuing to provide a level of service that is phenomenal compared to the situation that we're in.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And I think I speak on behalf of all the panel to the staff. It must be horrendous for them. I open up for questions. Mandy, you have your hand up. You're on mute, Mandy.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one with regard to carers. I thank you for all the work that's been done, because probably we've been kicked into touch, with COVID, and we've had to learn fast. And, with regards to our workforce out there, they are very much frontline, and, the effects must be very, very emotional, because it's a completely different capacity. It's a completely different arena. But I would also like to pay tribute to family and friends who've also stood up to the bar. And, it's like, I can speak for myself. It's been quite heart-wrenching. When somebody gets taken into hospital, you're being told they're in for 10 days, and then you get a phone call, we've got COVID cases, home. So it's very much everybody's had to run, and everybody's had to come up to that level of total commitment. And, when we talk about mental health, things affect us all in different ways, and we're all adult on this forum. But probably, it's not now. It's in the next 6 months, the next year, as we start recovering from COVID, then we're going to have an actual picture of, the true story or the true reflection of where we are with mental health and the impact that COVID has had, just on carers. But it's, I think it'd be very remiss not for us to identify the work that family and friends and community volunteers have done to stand, side by side with what I would call our foot soldiers, because they are out there, and my God, they've done a damn good job. And they have been probably at the top of their career, dealing with things probably they never would have thought, and I would never say ordinary people, because these people who are out there doing these jobs are very special people, are very committed people. And, when we talk about the dom care teams, I dare say those teams, they will still keep going. And in the end, it will just collapse. So my plea to you, Dave, and to Mark is, thank you for all that has been done, and thank you for the forward planning and the positives that have come out of that. But just don't let go of that ball yet, please. Let's just hold on for the next 6 months, maybe 2 years, because I don't think the impact is here, not now. I think people are still very committed, very aware that they have to keep going then and provide that service for the very vulnerable across the city and the county. But I don't think the impact is here yet. So my plea, to us all is be aware of what might come our way. We might have another tranche now of, well, we don't know what's coming. But for our staff, for our very professional teams, and for the family and friends that have probably had to do things that they never thought possible, I take my hat off, and a huge thank you, because they've actually kept us afloat. But carers, very close to my heart, as to probably everyone on the forum. But care and responsibilities, like everything else, in social care, comes in very different forms. And it can be that simple little task, or it can be that critical task. But we've done it. And even though, I hear a lot of negatives, I think we need to be really, really proud of what we've achieved, because yes, we've hit critical points, but we've done really, really well. And, once again, as Sue has said, thank you, Dave, and I thank you, Mark, for your commitment and for, taking us along this rough ride and achieving what we have to date. But don't let it go yet, please. That's just my plea to you.
Thank you, Mandy. Are there any other comments or questions that you want to raise? No hands, so thank you both Mark and Dave for update, which is, as I say, oh gosh, well done to all the staff. Okay, we go to item now, number 7 then, for information, the work plan for next year. It's only for information. And just to tell you, thank you for all attending, and our next meeting is the 12th of January, 4 o'clock. Thank you so much. Liz, can you stop recording now?
Thanks
Thank
everyone.
you.
If I don't see you, have a lovely Christmas. Keep yourselves well.